Yeah, hold on. I'm on it.
Bob is on.
Do you know what's wrong, or are you just clicking everywhere?
I'm guessing. I'm just making it look like I'm
dear
doing
God.
something. Hold on. Boopity boop boop boop.
Okay.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah?
Are we?
I don't know. How about now, guys?
Guys, are we sounding good in YouTube land?
Good, good, good.
Can
It's
you-
back. Sorry, I had to
Adam
reinstall
Zay says
OBS. So,
I
Okay.
was touched by an angel.
It works! There it goes. There we go. It's on now.
Sweet.
You can all have Voltar in your ears now.
Well, so you guys just all missed us being the funniest we've ever been. So the rest of the stream is going to be trash.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
Just sign off now.
sorry,
Nick and
just
Steve
blame me.
gave away.
So yeah, I think we were in the middle of Steve bragging about Kickstart, something like that.
I got addicted to this purple Kickstart, and I just go to gas stations in the middle of the night like a cigarette addict and buy them out. And then when they institute this soda tax in this county, I'm gonna be the same cigarette addict that goes across the county line to buy.
Yeah, so drive to Lake County, man. Pick up a carton of cigarettes and 20 pack of Mountain Dew Kickstarts. All right, so I don't know, Steve, why don't you talk about what are you talking about today?
Yeah, I guess one thing I was working on was power supplies for the retro consoles.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know why Voltar is. Laughing.
Yeah, I know.
I think we need to keep Voltar away from the chat.
God, Voltar's the one losing his shit, and I'm the one drinking. Jesus.
I have a metal thing that looks like this is my laptop.
He thought that was a walker. Your table.
I think we all know
Again,
there's no chance that Renee is handicapped, because if he was, they would have strapped him to my back when we were all up in Canada. He would have just rode me around like a big fat fucking pony.
Oh God, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. Go on.
Maybe I should preface with I'm in a hotel room right now for work, so and I'm streaming from the hotel room, and there's this lovely table that fits my laptop. It's not my walker, I swear to God.
If you joined us during the 2 a.m. stream last time, you'll notice that Renee is staying in a legitimate hotel. So not every hotel in Canada is predominantly patroned by hookers and attendees of the Montreal Retro Gaming Convention.
Yep.
So, anyway, what were you saying, Steve? Something about
Tell my employer, which is
you hook up video games with a power supply or something.
Yeah. Usually, instead of bringing your consoles out into the sun to gather the solar power, when we're lock ourselves indoors, we need power to make them work. So back when we first started like doing stuff, people were asking us for replacement power supplies because the originals are too expensive, and two, the really crappy ones they bundle with consoles at the stores are like super noisy and junky and unsafe.
And the originals are like 30 years old now.
That's
right?
True too. Yeah. So I went through like all these like adapters, and I opened them up to make sure they were safe, and I saw their noise profiles. I put them on the scope really quick to make sure they weren't broadcasting alien messages to another planet. So within a reasonable range of noise. And I found a couple, posted them, and then like 2 months later, someone's like, "Hey, I bought this thing, and it's really noisy." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I buy another one, and I open that up, it's completely different inside. Completely different. And so these Chinese-made adapters, they can change the guts inside whenever they want. So I decided to move towards UL-listed power adapters because they have a UL certification number, and if they change anything, they need to retest, recertify. So it's less likely that they would change stuff on you. So then I decided to test a bunch of UL-listed ones that were reasonable, and I put them under load and looked at the noise on them and if they perform well. And I ended up with one pretty decent one for that you could get from Amazon. I don't remember how much. Do you remember how much it cost, Bob?
No, it was pretty cheap though.
It's under 20, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went with that, and then I found like little pigtail adapters. For certain consoles, you would put one or more of these adapters. Hey, Bob's got it right there. So,
So,
and that,
you even made me a little cheat sheet too, so that you could you could know which one goes to where. But it gets a little crazy because some, like for SNES, like I need to go this into this into this.
I think SNES is the only one with the two pigtail solution, right? The rest are just single.
Yeah,
So-
I believe so. But that's what the SNES will look like. But I've been doing this in all my testing as well, or using this one. And I've been doing both this and the standard SNES brick, and I haven't found a single difference at all. Not one picture has come out different with this one. So, and then remember too, these are pictures where it's like zoomed in 100 times to look for artifacts and stuff. So, so far so good with this one.
yeah. So I tried to find a cheap solution for all this stuff that worked well. One thing. The reason why you get a bunch of noise on these power adapters is when these consoles were designed, they were designed to be used with just a transformer, bridge rectifier, capacitor.
A full bridge rectifier?
A full bridge rectifier. That's actually important because what they're meant to be used with that because they explicitly put these 7805 voltage regulators inside the consoles to bring that down to the 5-volt logic for the console. And there's something very important, which I think a lot of these people who are using switching power supplies and making their own switching power supply solutions is those aren't magic. You can't just blast voltage in and everything comes cleanly out 5 volts. They have something called a ripple rejection plot, and it peaks right at 120 hertz, which is double our line frequency, which is what you get from the full wave bridge rectifier. And it rolls off way down. What that means is if there's a lot of noise, like high frequency noise from a switching power supply, it blasts right through your regulator into all your other stuff. So the idea that, hey, the 7805 is magic, I could be really sloppy on the input, doesn't really hold. And that's why you get artifacts from really poorly designed switching power supplies.
And Steve,
yeah.
I'm sorry, there was a huge delay. I just wanted to, what you just said, is that complementary to a lot of people who replace the linear regulators, like in their NESs, SNESs, Famicoms, with switching regulators that typically exhibit a great deal more of noise? Do those both kind of go hand in hand?
Oh yeah, because any type of switching supply, most of the common ones when people build application circuits, they're usually around like 100 kilohertz, or if you want more efficiency, you go higher. But the thing with switching power supplies, and Bob, if you notice with that power supply I sent you, if you unplug it, that blue LED stays on for a while, right?
Yeah.
That's actually a good sign. What that means is there's a lot of capacitance on the output to smooth out all the ripple. So that's actually a good sign that is like that. But yeah, if you just blindly replace switching power supplies into these things that were designed to reject ripple only at like your line frequencies of 120 hertz, you're not going to get good performance. You're going to get a lot of bad stuff on your audio and video outputs.
Cool.
So
yeah, I guess if people are curious as to the specific power supply he's talking about, you can go to our website. We have it under the third-party products page, that just a bunch of products that we recommend that we don't make or make any money off of. It's just kind of our recommendations for things we've tested. So you can check it out there, and it has the diagram or cheat sheet that Bob's talking about of what pigtails you need to buy to adapt it for the correct console. So I'm going to move on to Renee. I know Renee had kind of an interesting topic he wanted to talk about.
Are we doing our topics right now? Okay. Well, I've been wanting to talk about this since day one, right? And you guys always pushed my topic away.
I helped push it up, but then it got pushed back by other people.
so I wanna talk a bit about my major pet peeve in retro gaming, which is using 3.3 volt flash in 5-volt systems. and you know, like from a 10,000 foot view, it seems like all is good and you can do this, and a lot of people will say, you know, well, I got such and such device and I didn't know it was 3.3 volts, and I've been using it in my, you know, my Genesis or my SNES, and everything's working fine. Therefore, it's okay.
So can you maybe for people who don't know specifically what you're talking about, like give an example of what kind of device you'd be talking about here?
Yeah. The most ubiquitous ones are some of the earlier versions of the EverDrives. I get shot at when I talk about this because I don't know. Sometimes you're not allowed to speak badly about these EverDrives, but there were some pretty poor designs when they started out, and some of them still are. A good example of this would be the Master System EverDrive, the Master EverDrive. So what happens is, back in the day, obviously all this logic stuff worked on 5 volts. And when people are designing new systems now, like new cartridge systems, they want to use modern parts. And any reasonably sized flash memory nowadays is a 3.3 volt memory. And you can't just tie that into a 5-volt system. It doesn't work. And I mean, we can get into the details about why it doesn't work, but maybe that's a bit above. I don't want to say that the audience wouldn't understand, but it's kind of, I don't want to start explaining all this stuff. Point is, it's bad, and you shouldn't do it, right? And
so, could you give an example of like a consequence of doing this, maybe, rather than going into the full technical explanation of why you shouldn't, but like what could happen?
Well, on most retro consoles, you're tied directly either to the CPU for the data and address bus, or into some sort of bus arbiter, which is managing the bus. Like for so example, on the Master System, you're mostly tied directly into the VDP and the Z80, whereas on the Genesis, you're tied directly into like an arbiter chip, depending on which version of the Genesis it is, and that goes to the CPU and the cartridge and whatnot. Either way, you always have a 5-volt device down the line. And what happens is when you try to drive a 5-volt Logic 1 into a 3-volt input, there's some voltage there that it just doesn't disappear, right? It has to be dissipated somewhere, and it gets dissipated as heat in either the flash chip or whatever it is that you're programming. And all
presumably this is shortening the life of that thing by generating a bunch of excess heat.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the heat is generated by a component that's there to protect the input of the flash chip, the 3.3 volt chip. That's there to protect against transients, right? So like small microsecond transients, not steady state 5 volts that's being pumped out by a really strong TTL logic signal. And the other thing people don't realize too is you could bring those devices into latch up, and this is what happens on the Neo Geo MVS multi-carts. Those 161N1s and whatnot, those big yellow carts.
Those cheap ones you get from China.
Yeah. You put a cheap one of those into an MVS, and half of the games lock up and they freeze, right? Because you're sending those chips into latch up because there's too much digital current flowing. Well, not current is not digital or analog, but you're making too much current flow into that chip. So you're not only damaging your 3.3 volt device, which is the brand new one that you bought, but you're also causing your old console, whether it's your MVS or your Genesis or whatnot, to drive out way too much current on those pins. Right? If you look at standard logic, they're probably somewhere around 5 to 10 milliamps per pin, and any more than that, and it's definitely shortening the life of those devices. I haven't heard of somebody actually frying a Genesis, but I've heard on people I know on for retro gaming, they bought the 401 the red cart for NES. It has all the extra games. I think you get it on AliExpress for something like $50. And I've heard at least like 3 or 4 people that have used that in an NES and they've fried their console because of it. And lo and behold, I told them, take a picture of this cart of the PCB. I want to see what it looks like. And it was just, it was a straight 3.3 volt flash right into the bus. And there's a CPLD on there that's doing some memory mapping, right? But it's not doing any kind of voltage translation or level translation. And this is causing the NES to die.
Cool.
So,
well,
like in general, what you're saying is, and this is important, you're violating data sheet specifications, right?
Absolutely.
And that, even if it works, you're still violating data sheet specifications. And in the data sheet, they always say there's a table of absolute maximum ratings, right? And they say if you go beyond this, it's all on you. It's like, it wasn't designed for this. It's all up to you. And so the excuse, it's been working for me, is not good enough. This applies generally to a lot of the engineering in this type of space.
So is there a way to test these to see, with a multimeter and not with a scope or anything, to see if the version that you have is doing, is acting incorrectly?
Well, I don't even think you need a multimeter. You can just you can clearly see by looking at the part numbers on an EverDrive, for instance, if it's actually doing any kind of voltage translation or not. If one thing that Crix does on the EverDrive, which is absolutely horrendous, and let me just bring up the picture right now. On the master EverDrive, there's a bunch of series 100 ohm resistors with every data line that go to the flash. So this is Crix's way of trying to limit the current that's flowing into the input diodes of the 3.3 volt flash, because he's smart enough to know that he's driving 5 volts into 3.3 volts and he's causing a short circuit between 2 supplies at one point. So he put a resistor in line between there, but it's still not any.
It's not good practice. Bad practice.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do a technique like that where you're gonna limit current into diodes, ideally you would put if you want to do that, you would put external Schottky diodes that are, their own part that can dissipate their own heat instead of rely. You never want to rely, like you said, on steady state current flow through protection diodes. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because I'm not totally familiar with the silicon makeup of those diodes, but I would highly suspect that some of those might actually just be body diodes, right? Would they be just inherent diodes that kind of happen to be there, but they weren't specifically put there?
If I had to guess, they're probably diode connected transistors of some kind.
Yeah. Okay.
Like a. They have the PN material, and it's like that. It's specifically stamped into the.
Okay. And I do want to talk a bit more about the practice of putting those resistors in, because I know where that comes from. It's on the Mega EverDrive. He uses the Altera EP2C5 FPGA, and if you look at the Cyclone 2 datasheet, which is, it actually says that once your FPGA is configured, which means it's been programmed, its SRAM is full and whatnot, you can actually use limiting resistors to limit the current flow into the protection diodes in order to do voltage translation from 5 volts to 3.3 volts, right? So someone's read that data sheet for Altera, and they said, oh, well, it applies to all these other 3.3 volt chips as well, right? But even then, if if you read that app note correctly from Altera, it says that's only valid after you've programmed, after the FPGA has been configured. During configuration, you're not supposed to put any voltage on those pins, right? What's happening with the Mega EverDrive is it's sitting in your Genesis. The Genesis bus is trying to do some bullshit, whatever, trying to read it. Meanwhile, the FPGA is configuring itself, and the inputs are not designed to be protected during that state. So even if during normal operation, the Mega EverDrive is within spec with those resistors, it's not within spec during the first 3 or 4 seconds when your screen is flickering, like green and yellow and whatnot before it comes on, right? That's a potential damage zone for that chip right there. That's outside the specs.
Right. So the second you press the power button, all the Genesis stuff comes on, but the FPGA has a little bit of time before it's ready, and during that time interval is when you're violating the datasheet specs. Right.
Yeah. And there's no telling what state the address bus and the data bus are in at that point. I mean, the Genesis at that point is probably trying real hard to read memory to start trying to do something, right? So
yeah.
So what are our choices? I'm not being sarcastic, but I mean, I appreciate you pointing this stuff out. So what do we do? Are you basically just telling everybody we're fucked, or is there a way to fix this, or is there?
No, I mean, I've tried.
He's a crook. He's trying to push his own stuff. Isn't it obvious?
I want to buy my own EverDrive. Yeah, that's right. I am not a crook.
Isn't that the old...
No. There's, I mean, the master EverDrive, he's never going to fix. I mean, it's been like that, and that's it. There have been some newer revisions of some Crix stuff that he's added the level translators to. And level translators, just so that everyone's on the same page, they take a 5-volt signal and they bring it down to 3.3 volts, and vice versa, right? So that's perfectly legal. That's the correct way to do it. There's no damage on either side when you do that. When you do it that way, and a good example of that would be the Turbo EverDrive, where the first version has just those resistors that do a horrible out of spec job to limit the current, and the Turbo EverDrive version 2. He's actually added those level translators. So
haven't you contacted him about this at some point?
I've emailed him a few times, and very politely, I said, I've looked at these designs, and you're out of spec and whatnot, and blah blah blah. Are you gonna, do you plan on doing something about it? And he's never ever replied.
Well, he goes through phases too, because I believe he travels for work. And I think he's one of those people that just, like, when they're gone and come back, they just kind of delete everything that happened before they got back. So I know a lot of people like that, so I'm not faulting him for it, but I'm too OCD for that. I have to fucking read every email, unfortunately.
Yeah, the thing that really sucks though is that he sells, what is it called? Let me just make sure I get the right name here. It's called the Flash Kit cart for Genesis, right? Mm-hmm. And that's essentially a 16 megabit chip right on a 16 megabit 3.3 volt chip right on the 5 volt Genesis bus. And I've seen some batches of games go on Twitter being produced with this type of board. I'm not going to actually, no, I shouldn't name anyone, but I contacted these people and I told them, well, you understand, right, that you're using a part that's completely out of spec, right? It's 3.3 volts, and using it in the 5 volt system, and I, explain what the consequences are and whatnot. And sadly, people they don't know. They don't know what it is. They don't know the difference. They don't know what it could potentially cause to their customers' consoles and so on. So, I mean, Bob, what are our options? We have to be vocal about it, I guess. And like we've said in previous podcasts, is if you're in doubt, send a picture on Twitter, tag me, I'll look at it. Right? If it's high res enough, I can see the part numbers. It's really very, very easy to identify if there's level translators on there or not.
But for people that have those older versions, is the only option really just to throw them out? There's no way to modify them?
Well, you could modify one, but it would look very bad.
How big's the bus? It's like 8 or 16 bits.
Yeah, on SMS you've got 16 address bits, and 8 data bits and so on. So you're looking at converting like a good 20, 24 signals.
Gotcha.
And some of them have to be bidirectional too, right? So you have to do the direction. So that's where it gets tricky. The address and the control signals, that's easy. It's one direction. It's just making sure you get the right data direction is a bit trickier.
There was a very popular guide several years ago, and it's still probably fairly popular today, about of how to modify 2 Super Nintendo games for English translations, Super Mario RPG and Star Ocean. Now, Super Mario RPG is really unnecessary unless you just want to save some money and kind of have sort of a pseudo-real card. But at any rate, the guide calls for a specific memory chip, a flash memory, that operates on a 3.3 volt supply. And the guide tells you specifically to buy a 5 to 3.3 volt regulator and attach that regulator to the VCC pin of the chip that you're putting in there, so that the chip will operate at 3.3 volts. Well, it really doesn't really do anything for you because you've got all those other pins on there. You've got your data bus and your address bus. They operate on 5 volt logic. So by putting a regulator on the power rail of that chip, it's kind of a moot point in that instance. So it's just to kind of couple in what Renee's talking about. There are guides out there that are for reproductions that have some pretty gnarly poor practices in how to do things. It's relevant to what he's talking about. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, that's actually the cause of the problem that Renee is talking about, because your chip is powered on 3.3, and if your signal's 5, then it goes through the protection diode that's pointing towards 3.3. That's where the effect actually comes from, is because these chips are powered on 3.3 and the other one's on 5.
Right, exactly.
So somebody, Dave, in the comments, can you make something similar to a Game Genie that could just intercept these signals and change the voltage?
Well, the problem is with the regulator again, right? So like Voltar said, there's a regulator, and even on the Crick stuff, right? There's a regulator on the 5 volt line that's feeding to the 3.3 volt flash chip. So if you make like a Game Genie type device that converts all signals to 3.3 volts, are you any better? I mean, I guess if you send the 5 volt signal as well, it could potentially work out. I don't know. I'd have to draw it out maybe.
Gotcha.
The point was that you have it doesn't matter what your chips are powered off of. They got that part taken care of. They read the data sheet on that thing. It's like, hey, this part only operates off a 3.3 rail. Oh, okay, easy. I have 5 volt. I use a regulator. I'll get 3.3. The problem is the signals on the input and output lines, they're not matching up.
Right. That's right.
And kind of to what Renee had mentioned there is, if somebody who knows better is doing this wrong, and just going with it because it seems to work, people who could be possibly buying these chips and using them for their own products and may just not know that this is something that they should even be looking out for, it can cause a problem with their products down the line. So I don't know how we push that out into the consciousness of people as a whole, because it seems like kind of important, because now more and more we're going to start seeing homebrew stuff, right?
Yeah.
If people end up using this technology in the wrong way en masse, it's a pretty bad thing.
Yeah, so here's a good point. You're talking about en masse. I have a copy of Pure Solar, the second batch run, right? I think they made like 5,000 of those or something like that, right? So I open it up, put it on the scope, and it's using 3.3 volt flash chips on the 5 volt bus. Here's a professional grade, you'd think, professional grade product, right? They spent years developing this thing, but they, probably none of those guys are hardware designers, so they just, got random Joe Blow somewhere to make a board for them. And he said, oh, well, let's use this chip. And so now you've got a Pure Solar that mine gets pretty damn hot when I plug it into my to my Genesis. Actually, I actually bought the temperature gun from work to test it out, and it was getting like near like 40, 45 degrees.
Jeez.
Wow.
That's warm.
Oh yeah.
That's very.
Oh yeah, that's pretty damn warm.
The case was getting 45 degrees?
The case, yeah.
It's gonna start melting.
Yeah.
Because when I first noticed when I plugged it in, me and my buddy, we played for like 4 or 5 hours, right? It's an RPG. Now when I go to take it out, it was, it's legitimately warm when I took it out. I was like, fuck, what the hell's going on here?
Jeez.
I have a first run that I bought off an auction at the Retro World Expo. So I haven't plugged it in yet. May test it out after this.
Mine was both of mine were glob top, right? So I couldn't tell by the part numbers, but I did. So I put on the scope and I was probing some lines, and I could clearly see the clamping diodes coming on at 4 volts. So.
Jeez. I have a question. Steve and Zach have been just munching away over here. Did you bring enough for all of us? Because I'm hungry too. All I had was a cup of noodles with water in it. You fuckers are just munching away.
I'm sorry, Bob. Is that a crime?
Hey, to be fair, I've been muting myself every time I start chewing.
Fair enough.
The mute button on the Blue Yeti is pretty handy.
Me too. I've been muting myself.
Yes,
All
your
right.
body is loud. Voltar.
I guess I'll go next. My kind of update is a little bit shorter than Renee's by
Yeah, I'm sorry.
80%. I've been
Usually it's Steve who talks like that, but
yeah.
It's true, and I feel like a jerk, but the people in the comments are like, don't worry about it.
Mostly what I've been messing with since we last did one of these is test softwares. We were trying to clean up the Sega Saturn for one, and kind of the interesting thing we had started to look at, but kind of left to the side there was the 480p capabilities of Sega Saturn. It's kind of hidden in the code there, but don't have that quite working yet. So we're kind of curious how well that'll work. Oh God, you guys in the chat are terrible. And then
I'm not in the chat, so I'm totally oblivious.
Yeah, I keep it on the
best.
second.
It's for the best.
I keep it on the second monitor, so I'm not looking at it most of the time. And the other software that I've been working on lately is the Sega Dreamcast, and there's some kind of cool results there. Maybe the most important for us was we were wondering, does Dreamcast read what type of cable is plugged in on boot, or can it do it on the fly? So we wrote up some test software to probe that as to what the setting in the register is if you were to flip the cable type on the fly. And it turns out that it actually can read it on the fly as opposed to at boot, which is kind of important if we want to build a switch into the cable so that you can switch between modes and allow for universal compatibility on a single cable. And I don't know how many people know this, but there's a number of games that are just not compatible with the VGA mode on Dreamcast, and we want to alleviate that with just a switch. And so it's good to know you don't have to power off the console. If you happen to boot with the switch in the wrong position, you could just flick it over. So it's kind of an interesting point. And there's some other various things in our test software that we're testing out and having ready so we can have a kind of the same suite of things that we have for all the other consoles.
So basically the same trick of booting in 480i and then flicking to the 480p switch would work on your cables for that exact same reason on the games that don't officially support 480p.
Right. That's kind of what we would like. I mean, worst case scenario, if you couldn't do that, you would have to power off your console, right? Because if it only read that pin, I guess at boot, then you kind of be hosed, right? But
Well, it's up to the software, isn't it? Or the BIOS. The BIOS reads that pin at a certain spot, at a couple different spots, and then I guess it's up to the software if it wants to read it again.
right.
Well, you've got the header of the Dreamcast game that has a few flags for that. and then you've actually got the mechanical connection, whether
Yeah.
that pin is held high or low.
Yeah.
But my question is, despite all that stuff, you can probably, if you're toggling a bit in the register of the graphics processor, that's good, but you still won't get FMV scenes to play that aren't they won't play in interlace only games. Like, what's an example? I can't think of one.
I don't know. I haven't played any full motion video games. Have you, Steve?
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater has a lot of videos in it.
Well, yeah, I don't think the encoded video, the video stuff will play even if you force it. The gameplay, everything that the graphics processor renders, that'll probably work, but I don't think the full motion video stuff will, unless that's converted too, which of course means you're going to have to play a burned game for that. But that's something I just wanted to bring up sexually.
Okay.
I'm still not really understanding why some of the programmers did it that way. Like, there's a handful of games that aren't compatible with the RGB cables at all, or any RGB signal at all. You have to use either composite, S-Video, or 480p works fine, just not RGB. Doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah, I don't know why that's the case either. It's
I wonder. I mean, we don't have official dev kits, right? We're just messing around with the Dreamcast Chaos thing that people hack together. So I don't know. It could have been something related to how that official dev kit worked, where maybe it was just an extra step of work that for whatever reason people were just lazy and didn't want to do. I don't know. That's the only. This is a total guess, but.
I think a lot of the Capcom fighting games are part of that. I wonder if it's something they did intentionally so you can't stick a Dreamcast in an arcade box or something.
It could be it could be anything. I don't know. There's tons of possibilities. But it was another interesting thing about using that KOS SDK, Nick, is that the default video modes they had in there actually were way off from whatever Sega used.
Yeah,
that was an interesting find that we figured out.
Yeah, so we kind of had to hack some custom ones into there to do the things we wanted. But in any case, that stuff's coming along. Although I suspect that after this week, Dreamcast is going to take a serious backseat for about 3 months. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, I'm still working on the Dreamcast things too. The biggest problem is how, I don't want to get into it now because then I'll just talk for like an hour and a half, but basically it's how digital displays interpret the Dreamcast signal. It's kind of an issue with CRTs too, but CRTs are so much more straightforward to this stuff. So yeah, I'm covering that in part 2 of my Dreamcast episode. Will we have a prototype of anything Dreamcast related 2017?
I think we certainly would like to have a prototype in 2017, and even my goal would be to place an order in 2017 for a lot of reasons. But I don't know. We'll see.
Cool.
I like spending money, is what it is. I just like writing big checks.
There you go.
So how about you, Bob? Any interesting things?
Oh God, so much. I haven't slept in forever now. Well, after getting all my stuff jammed into the office, I there was so much I had to work on that I've been doing a little bit here and there. So I feel like I've accomplished nothing but worked on so much. But a few things that I've been working on that were kind of, I guess people felt were important, were there's a lot of Sony BVM monitors that have issues with certain consoles. So the most, the easiest one to demonstrate would be the Sega Master System. The whole upper part of the screen kind of goes one way. And that's because, even the very expensive A series, and I think I have an F series BVM that does this, But there's something called automatic frequency control, or VCR mode, which is what it's called on some of the BVMs, where I guess it basically takes, these high-end video monitors are designed to get a specific signal. And in VCRs, whenever you would hit fast forward, the signal would get screwed up as it was skipping through the frames. So they came up with a way to fix that. And some BVMs have it and some don't. So I was trying to figure out any possible way to get around that. And I think I really don't have a solid thing. There's the only one that I found is by running it first through a G-SCART switch, and then outputting RGB HV, and then into another Extron box. So basically the sync is regenerated twice, and I think in doing so it adds in some of the missing information. But yeah, that was one of the interesting things, because these monitors are getting much harder to find, so pretty much anything you can get you take nowadays, especially if it's low hours and in good condition. But it's pretty disappointing if you find a really awesome BVM, get it home, and then find out like Master System doesn't work, Neo Geo has issues. So I was really hoping to find a permanent fix for it, but there's nothing yet.
I think I mentioned this to you. I feel like for Master System, maybe my understanding of how this works is wrong, but I thought that the G-SCART switch lights sync regeneration is something that would be able to recreate the missing pulses that you're talking about.
So I thought so too. I emailed Super G about it, and he emailed me back right away, and that was like 4 or 5 days ago. I feel like an ass. Sometimes I just don't have time to catch back up with him. But yeah, there was a lot of things about what he described that it didn't act the way I had expected. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just it didn't act the way I had expected. So. And the other thing that I've just been working on is I asked a few people to send me SNES consoles with the white line issue, because I still I don't have too many of them, and it wasn't, I didn't get as many people sending them to me as I had hoped, and one of them turned out to be a 2-chip, but a few of the ones that I did look at, it's actually pretty cool, because in composite video, so it was a SNES Mini, so obviously I could only test with composite. And the line was definitely there. I mean, like, you can't, it was absolutely solid right there. So I did an RGB mod to it. 0 line with the RGB mod. I used Voltar's 7374 based board. But then composite video still had it. So it didn't have anything to do with the pull down resistors or anything. So then I swapped out the voltage regulator with the one that Steve recommended, and that is what got rid of the lines. So that was kind of neat to see that, and I also saw that on the SD to SNES, if you run like Super Mario World, you get it in the line in the beginning when the Nintendo logo pops up, but not on the SD to SNES. And I believe it's because of the power conditioning built into that. So I think Steve knows more about exactly why this is all happening, but at least I'm kind of figuring out the what and the how,
I mean, I could break it down, I think, pretty simply of what I think is going on. So you got, we discussed this before, like the cause of this is mainly due to the 5-volt rail kind of like dipping down. And so replacing the regulator stops it from current limiting fast for that dip to occur, or reduces how far that dip goes down. But then any type of video amplifiers that are powered by this rail, they have any type of amplifier has a spec called power supply rejection ratio. And what that really means is if your power supply changes its voltage, how much of that makes its way into what comes out of your amplifier? How much does it affect it? And so what it sounded like to me was that the internal like encoder on the SNES has very poor power supply rejection ratio, PSRR they call it. And therefore, if you have a dip in there, it'll make its way out to your composite video. But instead of you bypassed it, it didn't go into those amplifiers. You went into a different amplifier, the 7374, which has a really good power supply rejection ratio. even if there is a dip in the power supply, it doesn't affect the output because that rejection ratio is so high.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if that makes sense. It's just two different steps. You got the whole power thing in the first place, and then how much does that power anomaly affect the actual video signals?
Yeah, not only does that completely make sense, but it explains a lot of what I've seen over the years, and why I couldn't say for sure why certain things I did fix the white line. So yeah, cool. So basically, I guess the short version is what I've always said. I just now understand why. But,
which is important. That's important.
Just do an RGB bypass with an amp on it. Make sure the signal's correct. Buy good, well-made boards, or if you're going to do it yourself, make sure to follow the correct signal and everything. So
cool. All right, Voltar, let's hear your self-promotion spiel.
First of all, I would just like to say that this has been very physically engaging. I'm getting turned on by everybody here. Secondly, I've had two things really going on. Well, I've had a bunch of stuff, but fun stuff, I guess, to talk about. I did start a YouTube channel. It's very new and unpolished, but I do have a YouTube now, and I have been putting videos up. Of some very interesting things. Of course, I do some, DIY modding installation videos that I hope that people are getting some, utility out of. And I just, about a week ago, released the first installment of my Legend of the Douche series, which basically encompasses terrible, deplorable mod work that people are paying far too much money for, and I show you how you can right these wrongs and be a champion in your own life. Other than that, I've been, there's a lot of fun stuff going on, and I have this little bastard right here. I was playing with my Amiga 500, which is a great computer, of course. And I wanted to hook up a secondary hard floppy drive to it, and it's kind of difficult to do. You have to buy either a really expensive Amiga floppy drive, or you have to modify a PC drive. Well, I designed this little unit right here that will plug into the floppy port on the back that will allow me to directly interface a PC floppy drive or an Amiga floppy drive to the unit, and I have one seamless Unitarian board that will let me achieve my dreams in life and be horny. So that's about all I have to say.
So are you planning to make that as just something for you to keep for yourself, or are you going to make that a product and sell it?
I'm going to. I believe, I've polled the audience here as far as interest is concerned, and I believe there's enough interest here to warrant production of this. This was just a really quick little, Jesus Lord Christ of Latter-day Saints, I don't even know where I threw it. This was just a really quick little like a weekend project. I routed this out and put this together. People seem to like it and seem to be interested in it. So I'll probably put a few of these out in the coming weeks.
The components on that thing are pretty common, right? Like there's nothing in there that's terribly difficult to source.
Oh no, these are just really all. The only thing that's kind of proprietary is this 23-pin, not a 25-pin D-sub connector. This is pretty proprietary to the Amiga, and this can be hard to source. But the two other components on here that are, well, the chips at least, one's an AND here, and one's a negative AND gate, and the other is just a flip-flop. Very common stuff, very easy to build. Other than the D-sub connector, everything's very cheap and easy to obtain. But other than
how
that,
much you'd be selling it for?
Probably $4 million, Bob, since you asked. $4 million to, what is that in Canadian dollars? Renee, what is that? like $3 or something? I don't know. But probably,
so we can expect this to be out of stock on your website soon, then.
Well, we can expect this.
Will you be doing pre-order?
Well done, Bob.
You can expect yourself, Bob, to go to hell. Lord Voltar does not find you entertaining to his body. But no, probably in a couple of weeks I'll have some stock up of that. And I've got to get back. People are asking about the Sega Mega Video. I'm getting back on that. Got to dial a few little things out on that to make that perfect across the board. And of course, there's some Neo Geo AES RGB attention that'll be happening very soon. This was just a quick weekend project, but other than that, that's really all I have to say that's sexually engaging to the audience.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Voltar. I did a quick search on DigiKey, and they don't 24 position D-sub connectors. So.
Say that again. Say that again, Renee. I can't hear you for your Canadian connection.
I said I just did a quick search on DigiKey for those D-sub connectors, and everything that they list goes from they go 20, 21, then 24 positions. They don't sell 23 position connectors.
Right. It's they're very difficult to source. I know a couple of sources where you can still get those from some old vendors, but you won't find that off DigiKey or Mouser or any place like that.
When you said the Canadian connection, I just for some reason I pictured a daytime talk show hosted by Renee on that couch setup he has there.
Yeah, I need
the
someone
Canadian
here.
connection with Renee.
Actually, Steven's in town. I could have had Steven. For anyone that was in Montreal who met Steven, he's in this town.
Nice.
You
So that's really
very
all.
far away in your camera, Renee. It does feel like a talk show setting.
Yeah.
Maybe I should. Here, I have an idea.
Oh, here we go.
It's about to get intimate.
If he takes out a blow-up doll and puts it on the couch, I'm going to be so impressed. Close enough.
Yeah.
There we go.
Perfect.
Oh, I think oh no, my hat's in my car. Shit.
I have a blow-up doll here.
You are not the father.
You want to see it? You guys want to see my blow-up doll that I
No.
got?
Thanks, Zach. You
No.
can just stay right
Keep
where
it
you're
in the
at.
closet.
I'll be right back.
Jeez.
Oh, somebody thought I was getting naked.
So while Voltar's gone, I think now maybe it's a good time to give people an update about some stuff in HD Retrovision land. Namely, that we actually went ahead and approved Voltar as a modder for two specific mods, a SNES Mini and the N64 NS1 serial number consoles. So we tested out his stuff and works good with our SNES cable. So if you get your console modded by him, we'll support it through our regular. Oh my dude.
Come on, girl.
Although after this, I were considering retracting that.
So much wrong with this. Everybody take a screenshot right now. Everybody take a screenshot of this, please. Wait, how's this? Okay.
I love the vaping around.
Yeah. Oh man.
Well, this went downhill quick.
Yeah. And that was why we never hosted a retro roundtable again.
Yep. Well, I feel bad about I feel less bad about getting drunk at 2:30 in the morning and showing up at the last one. At least.
Yeah. This is why Voltar is not allowed in Canada, by the way.
Well, to be fair, Nick, or to be fair, Dick, there are a plethora of reasons why I'm not allowed.
Yeah, it's just because he has more than one blow-up doll.
Yeah.
What was the story we told? It involved poutine and a moose, and that's all we
Yeah,
can
that's
talk
right.
about.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, there is a gag order against me talking about that. You people keep fucking asking me on the internet.
So someone in the chat is asking what the doll's name is. It Renee Stee or Voltar?
She's nameless.
Oh, Renee or Steve Voltar. Okay, yeah. She's nameless.
What's that, sweetheart? Huh?
That doll is truly his douche and dance right there.
Never mind. Yeah, I'm really embarrassed right now.
Yeah, I bet.
So now that everybody's watching has killed themselves, what are we talking about next?
Yeah,
I
I
thought-
thought follow that.
Should go with the questions, right? I mean, we've done all our updates. So.
Yeah.
One of the things that I kind of wanted to bring up and hear everybody's opinion on within the chat here was something that Bob talked about in one of his weekly roundups, which is replacing cart labels, and whether people thought that was a good idea or not. I get the feeling we may have differing opinions on that.
Oh yeah, fire away then.
So my opinion is that I think it's actually okay as long as the label that you slap on there says reproduction clearly somewhere. I don't have this need to keep the external cart as original as possible. Like particularly if the label is completely destroyed. As an example, one of my favorite games I have, Kid Chameleon. The label on it's totally destroyed. If I could get a decent reproduction label and it just clearly said a reproduction label on there, I would have no issue slapping it on. I mean, I understand where people are coming from, and you don't want to sell that as anything but a real cart with a reproduction label, but as long as that's somehow noted on there, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I disagree.
You just leave the crap on there?
Unless the label was completely gone, like completely gone, then yeah, I would put it on, and I would put, put on the thing, repro label, original guts or something, but that would be the only other time, because eventually that cart's going to get resold as a mint condition original cart, which means eventually somebody's going to get ripped off.
So I think
a poorly informed consumer who doesn't look at what they're buying will get ripped off.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying, like, it needs to clearly say reproduction label. Like, I would be against slapping on an identical label to the original.
Has this conversation been sort of charged? There's a lot of sort of vigorous debate, and I think this all comes from that 8-bit guy who took an old, crappy copy of Pitfall and the acclaimed version of WWF, and he really replicated the old crappy labels for his own little cheap old games. And I think a few people kind of went on a ridiculous diatribe about that and sort of painted that in a light that just was totally displaced, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what people's fucking problem is.
Well, Bob's point stands then with what you just said, where okay, this guy did it for himself, but you don't know what's going to happen in the future, and that could recirculate at some point. Yeah, so without putting like a thing that Nick said that says reproduction label, and you make it identical, it's going to recirculate, and it's not going to be genuine. That's what Bob's point was.
Yeah, I heard that argument. I know what you're talking about. It's the argument that basically this guy could die, and his collection may go back into the public sphere for sale, or he may fall upon financial hardship and need to sell it. And what's he going to do? Is sit there and rip all the fake labels off? And I totally get that. And it sounds like he was probably putting labels on there that are indistinguishable from originals, and that's not cool in my opinion.
Sorry. There's a pretty damn hilarious comment on YouTube.
Here's my thing on that, though, and I guess this might be sort of the libertarian in me. Ultimately, it is his property. What he doesn't with it, does or doesn't do with it, really isn't none of my business. It's none of your business. It's up to him to ultimately, whatever sort of a strain of morality that guy has, 8-bit guy, if he ever decided to put that game on eBay or put it back into that secondary market, it's his choice to be honest or not. Now, I totally get and understand the argument that it would probably be a better practice if you at least put something on there that differentiates that artwork from what the original would be. I get that, but at the same time, I'm not going to tell that guy. I'm not going to try to assert anything on anybody who wants to do whatever the hell they want to do with their own property.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to put a gun, or I'm not going to have a government official put a gun to that guy's head and tell him what to do.
I just think it's kind of asinine that people, we're seeing these 20, 30-minute YouTube videos over something so. I just think it's entirely nonsensical. I think that people are taking this whole situation and turning it into something that it isn't. There's all what if scenarios. Sure, I get that. He could sell them one day, but ultimately, this 8-bit guy, very good guy. I really like his stuff. He's just a guy that had some really shitty looking carts of some cheap games that he just wanted to see if he could fix up so he could proudly put them on his shelf and they wouldn't look so unaesthetically pleasing. Give him a fucking break.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I kind of see this in the same light as restoring your console or maybe even modifying your console, right? If you're going to take your SNES and you're going to send it to Voltar and he's going to make it better, when you sell it later, it's your responsibility to say, well, hey, something was done to this console and it's not in original condition anymore. And as it so happens, I made it better, right? So if you take a game label and you change it for your own collection and it stays on your shelf for 5 years, whether it says repro or not, I don't think that has any bearing. Yeah, any bearing on anything other than if you're going to get rid of it, I think you have to do the same due diligence as you would a modded console and say, well, I at one point improved this game cartridge because the label was shit and now it's better, right? It's not in original condition, but it's very good.
But you can open up a console and see, oh, this is modded, right?
Right.
That's clear to see.
Yeah, but how long does somebody's responsibility extend, right? Like, I go out of my way. Let's say, for sake of argument, I don't follow what I think you should do, and I just put an identical label on there. And I sell this to somebody, but I'm very clear in my selling. Hey, I changed the label on this. It was a piece of crap before. Have I not done my part there? Like, is it my responsibility to make sure that if he ever sells it, doesn't scam somebody?
No, it's not on your hands anymore, right?
No,
you
but
tell it to
that's
the
not-
one
that's
person
not
that
the
you give it
average,
to.
Scenario. The average scenario is like
Yeah.
somebody's collection gets resold after they don't pay the bill in their storage area, or they die and there's a estate sale, and somebody just takes a bunch of games and sells them and doesn't they don't know the collection. So it's these things are getting more and more common like that, and it's the same thing with cars and stuff too. But much like video games, there's a history of paint colors and what seats went in what model and all that stuff. So you could track it down. It's just harder.
Yeah, you just have to be careful with people's perceived value of the cartridge, right? I don't particularly think that whether a game has its label changed or not has any different perceived value in my eyes, right? I don't. It doesn't change what that game is for me, but someone else might, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to be careful into how they perceive it.
I've created and contributed a great deal of reproduction labels for a lot of reproduction games. So I feel like I kind of have some sort of position here to speak on this. And I understand the plight of people who are concerned with, these official games getting back in on that secondary market, like little Samsonite or something like that has a bullshit label on it. That's a legitimate concern, but I don't think the answer is just like with gun violence and sort of gun reform in the United States. I don't think the answer is to point a finger at everybody who may do that, or who may put a reproduction label that doesn't follow a certain criteria, or even say that it's a reproduction label, onto one of their own personal carts and say, you're a son of a bitch. You should burn in hell. You're not a real collector. You have no dick. You have no life. Go fuck yourself. I don't think that's the answer.
I don't think that's the answer either. I think this is more of just a question of kind of what people should do, what practices they should follow. Like, I don't think any of us here are discussing this in terms of like what should be legal to do. Just kind of.
Well, no, it's just sort of disparaging opinion that people have, like. That 8-bit guy, I keep using him as an example, but they really ran that guy through the ringer for all of the wrong reasons. And I still don't quite understand the sort of the demonizing and sort of the ostracizing of that guy just because he wanted to make some of his own personal games look a little better. And it's just totally out of context, and I think people are just wanting something to bitch about, to be honest with you, in a lot of respects.
Well, first of all, don't feel bad for 8-bit guy, because the controversy got him like another 100,000 views on that video. But I mean, my only thing is I've started to realize how important preservation is for anything, for whether it's a game, a car. If you really you know, and if you don't care that it's original, like I don't care that a lot of stuff is original, but I want to know the difference. So I agree with Nick in that if you just put a little thing that says repro label, it's, you know, it's not about you. It's about what happens after you. You know, where do these things go after you? So that's, you know, of course you do anything you want to something that you already own, but at some point it's going to be somebody else's, whether you like it or not. So
Screw you, Bob. I'm going to live forever.
I think the deeper question is, why would you sell off your games?
Yeah, when I die, my will is going to say that all those games have to be buried with me. So
You know,
Exactly.
That's
fuck
another
everyone
thing.
else.
People, you know, reproduction labels have matured quite a bit since like 2007, and despite all the time and all the advances in sort of replicating that nice cart label, the process does not create a perfect looking label. I don't care where you buy it from. I don't care where it comes from. If you're a collector of any caliber and you can't just look at it and feel it and tell the difference between a third-party reproduction label and what you know, is found on a first-party or even just a cartridge, you have some serious problems that you need to address in your own life. Because, you know, I don't care what artwork is on there, you can clearly look at it and you can feel it and you can do all kinds of things to immediately tell this isn't original and that's not in any way authentic. That's just my opinion.
Well, I don't think there's, you know, a perfect answer to this. I just kind of interested in hearing everyone's opinions anyway.
you just wanted to get Voltar all riled up.
Yeah.
It's not very hard to do. You don't need a topic.
If you look at him right now, it looks like he was all pissed off and just beat the shit out of somebody and left them laying behind him.
Shut up, Grandma! God damn it! You'll get the hose again. But no, I mean, I'm not trying to, you know, get on a soapbox or anything. I don't understand. I think, to me, I just look at this and I think, my God, people are just totally taking something out of context, and it's really causing sort of a really silly exchange amongst people. And I don't know. I just.
Okay, well, I think we probably could all agree that this issue is probably small enough that it's not worth creating a 30-minute video about. I mean, most people are not going through the trouble of doing this shit. It's a small percent. I would guess it's far smaller than even like the crappy mod market of things that should never be sold.
Yeah, that's much more of a problem.
Yeah. So anyway, that was cool. I was just interested. Do you guys want to answer like the giant ass backlog of questions that we have?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, let's just start from number one. I was vaguely considering doing small mods to most of my systems to ensure their ground plane was exposed to at least one of the case screws, and then running a wire from that same screw to earth ground. And basically, this guy just feels that earth ground is kind of the holy grail of grounds, and whether there's any benefit to doing that or any negatives to doing that.
Well,
waste of time.
Yeah, my first thought is if you're going to do that, you're almost surely creating a ground loop in your console.
Yeah.
So even if you're not doing that, there's no benefit to having the internal like grounds of your video system at the same potential as the soil. It's really meant for fault currents. That's what the earth ground is usually meant for. And so everything is isolated usually on your in your video system. So you have, let's say, your LCD TV and you have your Super Nintendo hooked up with one of those power adapters we talked about earlier. There's a reference node and they're connected together, and you still get all the shielding benefits from all the cabling going through. Hooking that node up to the soil, it doesn't do anything.
Cool, easy enough answer. Don't do it.
Anyone else? Yeah, it doesn't do anything for you, and like Renee said, could possibly cause more issues.
Yep. Cool. Can I fix the audio on my Model 2 Sega Genesis? When playing Castlevania Bloodlines, if I pause the game and turn up the volume, I hear noise through the video. I mean, it sounds like a shielding problem there.
Yeah.
Basically, your video's coupling into your audio and creating a buzz is the most likely thing. So just getting well-shielded cables. I don't know anybody that makes well-shielded Sega Genesis cables, though. So.
Oh God.
You do now.
You fucked us. You really did this time.
Yeah. Let's see. I'd like to know, why do people still region mod NESs by breaking the leg from one of the chips when you could just solder 2 wires to do the same trick? I don't know anything about that.
Well, you could break one leg or solder 2 wires, so it seems like one of these procedures involves one fewer steps than the other, just by quickly reading this person's procedure. But what they're talking about is the lockout chip in the NES has a pin which I believe is grounded in the console and is connected to VCC in the cartridge, because the CIC chip is the same in both ends, right? It just that pin controls whether the one is master or the slave, right? So if you turn both of them into a slave, you kind of bypass the whole CIC lockout mechanism. And when you cut one of the pins, you're essentially making it float, which turns it into a slave in the console. So you're bypassing the whole CIC mechanism. This is what they're talking about. I don't know about the mod that says solder 2 wires to do the same trick and nothing would need to be broken. I've never heard about this 2-wire mod, but it does seem like snapping that pin is a lot simpler than soldering 2 wires. Whatever soldering 2 wires might involve. I don't know where they solder, but
so it's there's some pull-up on there inside the chip that if you lift it.
That's entirely.
yeah. See,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
they leave it floating. That's a. I know it works because I tried it on mine. I mean, I tied it to a potential afterwards. But if you just disconnect it and leave it floating from a circuit, it does turn it into a slave. I know you're not supposed to leave digital inputs floating, but it works.
One's a master and one's a key.
Yeah.
That also, the 2-wire solder trick is really dependent too on the main board revision of the NES. That can work for CP07 and below, but CP08 main boards up to CP11, that won't work. It's best to, like Renee said, it's pin 4. You either clip it, you can leave it floating, or you can just tie it to ground after you float it off the board. I mean, it takes 2 seconds. Jesus. Fuck.
Oh man, this is a wordy question here. I think this is for Renee. I see so many different mods around the web for getting the best video from a TurboGrafx 16, and they all focus on the Hue C6260. Wouldn't it be better to bypass the RAM DAC and get straight to the HU C6270? Why not add HDMI or DVI to your TurboGrafx 16 directly from the graphics chip?
Basically, the question is, Renee, when are you coming out with this new product?
When people stop ordering graphics boosters and I have actually time to do anything. But yeah, so what this person is saying is completely true. It's the 6260 is the kind of like the video processor, right? It's the one that generates the analog video signals that get output to the real world from the console. But the video bus, the pixel bus, is exposed on the EXT connector of the TurboGrafx 16. So if you have intelligent logic that is monitoring the bus writes, and you can capture what colors are written to which palette, theoretically you can look at the video bus and the pixel clock and know which color index is currently being drawn at that particular pixel clock area. So you could reconstruct purely digitally. But and like, so this person is asking for HDMI or DVI. That would be a bit difficult. I think it would be pretty simple to quickly turn that into VGA by just doing a line double. That would be the first step that I would try to do.
I remember seeing Jason of GameTech received sort of a prototype of a device that hooked into the digital video bus, and it plugged right into the expansion port of the TG16, and it provided a digital
DVI
via DVI. I don't think that ever came about. I don't want to. Well, I don't know. I think he might have wanted too much money for it, or he couldn't figure it out, or couldn't do something. At any rate, that's kind of already been done, but I don't think anything's really been brought to market for that.
Yeah, it's not terribly complicated to do, right? It's just, well, even the device that Jason had, I think they had said that the price was going to be $300 or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, that's
they did angled connect, because their device was sitting upright with respect to the TurboGrafx. So the whole mechanics of it was completely wrong.
Well, and not only that,
there's a lot of room for improvement, even if it's already been done. And like you guys know, it is something I want to work on, and I hope to have something like some sort of a prototype within at least a year.
Well, the other unfortunate thing about that setup that he showed off was that only works with systems with an exposed, with the bus exposed, or there's an expansion connector. Nobody
obviously.
TurboGrafx 16. They want that in a Duo. They want that in a Japanese Duo R, and they want that in a real PC Engine system.
So that was a backhanded slap against Rene. Generally. I don't know why we bring you here anymore.
Backhanded slaps against everyone, eh? Nobody's even dissed you for your blow-up doll yet.
Only been praised.
Don't you ever talk about her.
That's Rene with 2 E's.
Yeah, damn it. People learn to spell. Rene with 2 E's is a woman's name. Rene with 2 E's is Voltar's doll's name.
Exactly. That's what
I like it.
All right, here's a totally loaded question, but I think we could answer it actually a little more generally. Is the FrameMeister worth it? My TV accepts 240p and recognizes it as 240p. I guess the rest of that question doesn't matter. That's kind of the heart of it. And I think we can kind of separate it to, is the FrameMeister worth it, and is an upscaler, general upscaling device, imagine a perfect upscaling device, is it worth getting something if your TV already accepts 240p? And I think the answer to that is kind of a personal preference thing, right? So just speaking from my opinion, looking at let's just take a Sega Genesis through our component cables directly into a TV, like a decent Samsung TV that processes 240p, right? I think that component solves a lot of what bothers me, right? The color banding, a lot of the issues with just a smudged and ugly looking picture. But what you don't get there, especially as your TV gets bigger and bigger, is the razor sharp pixels. So if that's what you care about, and not everybody does, then an upscaling, perfect black box upscaling device may be worth it to you. If you don't really care, if you just want a clean looking RGB like image that doesn't necessarily have that razor sharpness to it, then you probably are okay foregoing the upscaling device. And that's unless you're dealing with a TV now that also is introducing a bunch of lag because of this low resolution image. That might be the other thing. As for the FrameMeister in particular, I don't particularly like it. I like the OSSC a lot better than that.
I paired, in this full disclosure, this isn't because we're friends or anything. They're actually pretty lame douche lords. But at any rate, I paired the Sega Genesis HD Rectal Vision component cable with the 2010 Vizio 1080p panel, a 48-inch display, so it's a pretty good panel, pretty good sized panel. I plugged that son of a gun in, Super Nintendo cable, I'm sorry, not a Sega Genesis cable, but anyway, I plugged that in. I got 240p output, and I'm telling you right now, I was blown away. It was sharper than the FrameMeister. and it looked amazing. And I could not believe that that this TV was scaling the 240p up to the native panel resolution, and it looked. I would not want the FrameMeister if I could if I could buy component cables from HD Rectalvision for all the systems that I owned. It looked that good, and the latency and everything was really that good. So.
Well, that is TV specific, to be fair. Right.
Of course it is, Dick.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that with this old panel, it was amazing. I was not expecting that. It was so good. Very, very impressive.
So wouldn't the strategy be to like start kind of like small, and then it's like, okay, yeah, I have bad lag on my TV doing direct, maybe I should get this, and then build your way up until you find what your personal level is?
Yeah, that's exactly why I recommend your cables as step one, because it's like you plug them in, test your TV, make sure it works. It's probably going to be good enough for most people. You get no added lag, so the lag of the TV, but the cables don't add lag. And then eventually, if you're like, I imagine a lot of people are just fine with that. But some freaks like me are like, well, this is great, but I really do want it sharper, and maybe I can get it closer to the resolution. And then, I love the OSSC. The compatibility thing does, it does kind of suck sometimes. You have to make sure your TV is compatible, but it is a difference, but it's really just the difference that matters to you. But I have not ever had the experience that Voltar had. Every TV I've tried, like my plasma TV processes 240p really nice, and I'm very, very happy with it. But 1080p looks sharper. But the Samsung TV I have processes pretty much everything, and the difference between direct 240p and 5x scaling on the OSSC is night and day. But now you're adding a couple $100 cost, and you're talking about a few things that aren't always in stock. So start small, work your way up.
I didn't mess around too much with the OSSC's 4 and 5x modes, but what I did see, I was like, not really that big of a fan of. I actually thought that the 3x mode looked the best in my particular scenarios, and I would easily take 720 out of the OSSE over the 1080 out of the FrameMeister. And that's not even talking about lag. I'm not as crazy super sensitive about lag. Like 2 frames would probably not bother me in most cases. But the OSSC at 720 looked better on my 4K TV than the FrameMeister's 1080 output.
Renee, what do you think?
I was going to say something worth noting too is it's definitely worth getting. Well, I kind of have to get some sort of upscaler if you want to do any kind of capture with your system. If you want to stream your video, if you want to capture into your computer, do some YouTube videos and whatnot.
Yeah, capture cards are notoriously bad at old signals compared to TVs.
Yeah, at 240p they're really bad. So you're going to need that there. I don't particularly have an opinion when plugging these into an LCD because I don't game on an LCD because I think all you guys are, evil people for gaming on anything but CRTs.
Sounds about right.
And gaming on a CRT with the Rectalvision cables is great because component switches are so much cheaper than RGB switches.
Let's see what we got now. If you could mod out the perfect controller that would play on any system, and Voltar didn't waste the R&D budget on hookers and blow, what controller would you take and
I'm
engineer to work?
offended by that question because out of all of us, Voltar is going to be the least likely to do blow. Like, by far. Like, I'd give he's already hyperactive enough as it is. I'd give Steve that chance who doesn't even drink over Zach. So, right off the bat, I have issues with that. But continue.
I mean, I think in general the question is, of all the controllers that exist out there, if you could make one work on every other console, which controller would you pick? I would take the N64 controller, best controller ever.
No. No.
That's
Not
fucking
the
lame, man.
N64.
What other controller has a gun built into it? It's like the perfect controller for GoldenEye.
Right, it's so comfortable to hold, Nick.
Have you played GoldenEye in the last 10 years?
I-
10 years, no. But I played it a lot in college.
The strafe and the look are backwards, right? You can't. It's horrible.
I would take an NES zapper and like point it up to move up forward and down to move down and then shoot. So I would mod a zapper to be used with like a PlayStation 3.
I'm gonna agree with Bob and say the best controller is the SNES controller.
Oh, come on.
Oh yeah.
The
best
GameCube controller is
controller-
better than the SNES controller.
The best
What?
controller is the Xbox Type S. That's the best controller.
I'm so disappointed none of us said the Power Glove.
I was gonna say Power Glove, but I moved to the zapper because I thought it was dumb. It was way stupider.
I always really liked the Dreamcast controller because the buttons seemed to be made out of stale candy.
Yeah.
Why are there
Although-
teeth marks on these buttons?
I was trying to get the.
Although I think my opinion of the SNES controller is biased because of the games that I've played on it. I like the Saturn controller a lot too. I mean, I think there's a lot of that has to be said about having 6 face buttons instead of just 4. That always gets on my nerves with emulators, and when you have controllers plugged into the PC. I like to play a lot of Genesis games and the fighting games. If you have any kind of controller that has only 4 face buttons, they're just it renders them unplayable in my opinion.
The Model
For me-
2 Saturn controller wins. I think the Model 1 Saturn controller sucks.
Yeah.
No, absolutely, yes, the Model 2.
Sucks.
So, and I think for me, it's D-pad. If you have a good D-pad, I don't mind the controller and any other issues.
I do like the original Xbox controller because it doubles as a weapon. Like you could seriously injure somebody swinging that thing like a
You could hold
ball
that
and chain.
2 feet above a cat's back and drop it, and it would be paralyzed.
Yeah.
but you
I have
need
to
like
carry one in my
two,
pocket tonight, walking home through the ghetto to get on the subway.
Yeah.
you need like at least 2 weeks at the gym to be able to even wield that controller.
Well, that's a good point. You could use that controller for weightlifting. You didn't even have to go to the gym. Let's see. I have been working with arcade boards, specifically the Neo Geo MVS. As I understand, the RGBS signal on arcade boards is not within the range of what consumer TVs expect for RGB. For the first consoleized board I did, I put 500 ohm pots on the RGB line, similar to what they do in Super Guns. As Super Guns are designed for multiple boards, it makes sense to use pots, but if the SCART plug is going to be dedicated to one arcade board, it would make sense to properly adjust the levels for that board only. I haven't tried measuring anything yet, but was wondering if you had pointers on how to reach a proper attenuation and sync level. Would it be as simple as getting 75 ohm on the RGB lines?
No. No.
Next question.
The answer is. I mean, Steve, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to kind of answer that?
I guess I wanted to understand the situation more. It's how far is this run of cables going to be? I guess I don't understand the setup. I can't picture it in my head. So you explain it to me, Walter.
So what he's doing is, and he did say MVS, didn't he?
Yes.
Okay, so what he's doing is he's wanting to take the RGB and composite sync output off of the JAMA connector of the MVS, more than likely, and he's wanting to terminate that into a super gun or to a device that will attenuate that arcadish amplitude to television-friendly
Okay.
amplitude levels. So you're talking about. It depends really. It's dependent upon what kind of super gun he's got kind of going on there, how long that run's going to be. But if he's asking about how to, I think what he's wanting to do is he's wanting to I guess maybe measure the amplitude of the signal, and then writing that down, and then he wants to create probably a dividing network to attenuate that down to, I guess, 1.4 volts that will source terminate to 0.7 volts peak to peak. And he's asking what sort of tools or what sort of techniques can he employ so he can measure and he can do, to figure these things out.
Okay, that makes sense. That I could tell you what I would do. I would, you need a kind of basic understanding of electronics, though. You need to know something called Thevenin's theorem, and you need to take measurements to create an equivalent circuit that, looking into the JAMA connector of what your RGB outputs look like, and then you're able to design circuitry properly outside that to interface what's in there. That's the type of techniques I used for our own stuff, and it's kind of complicated. I don't think I could do this.
Yeah, no, you don't have to go into it. But I think
you need an oscilloscope, a calibrated oscilloscope, to do this type of measurements, and you need proper software. You need an oscilloscope, and you need some sort of software to output your swing, your maximum swing on your video.
Yeah, you want to shoot a white load.
Solid color screens, right?
A white load, Bob. I already said it. A white load.
So a common one is just a white screen. I use the 100% color bars because that's the profile that has these waveforms for red, green, and blue that all go up to white. But I know where I am on the video line by seeing the pulse waveform. So that's what I prefer. That's why our test software boots right up into 100% color bars.
So this is probably a really stupid question, but a lot of consoles and a lot of games I know, as you're booting the game, goes to a white screen for 3 or 4 seconds. Are most scopes fast enough where you'd be able to just wait for that screen and get the reading, or do you really need it to just kind of level out?
So the reason I don't like that is I don't know if that's pure white or not. I'm just speculating.
It never is. Like the PC Engine is notorious for outputting a white screen if you have no game in, for example, but that's not a 255 peak white screen. And I know people that try to take measurements off of that, and they got their data was pretty skewed because it wasn't pure white. So be careful, Bob.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we made our own test software. Like the first test software I ever wrote was for Genesis, and I found like this public domain ROM, which was color bars. And I'm like, okay, it's color bars, but how do I know these registers are hitting their maximum values? I'm going to write my own. And so that's what we've done for our own use.
Yeah, your software is free on their website and very fucking handy for testing. So I've been using that a lot.
I mean, it has different goals than other software. It's meant to mostly be used for oscilloscope work, but yeah, Nick, what are you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, Artemio software is a lot more decked out with all sorts of the flashing sprite and all this stuff, and it's really well done. Ours is more of kind of the quick and dirty, boot right into some test screens and flick through them and hit like the things you really need to, like interlaced, non-interlaced.
100%
pixel size.
Exactly. If you're a freak like us and you have to do some kind of freaking, side by side comparison tests and all that stuff just to boot in and do some quick stuff is awesome. But yeah, I mean the 240p test suite, Artemio is the man. So that's the scrolling vertical and horizontal it helps me calibrate monitors and shit. So I love those.
Yeah, it's for 2 different user groups, really.
Yeah.
Because one is meant to be like for a lot of end users that want to go through menus and stuff like that. When I use our software, I don't even have the TV on. I just have it like running into the scope, and I'm pressing the buttons, or not even pressing buttons, because it boots right up into the screen I use the most. So
I have to give kudos to Artemio anyway, because I wouldn't have even been able to get like dev environments of Saturn and Dreamcast without his help. I exchanged emails with him, and he was really, really helpful for that.
One of the greatest men of the 21st century is Artemio.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He's a great
20th and 21st century.
So there's a guy who basically has AES console and then a one of these Phantom 1 converters for playing MVS games. And he pops them in, and all the sprites have kind of these noise lines to them, just like cutting right through them. He's cleaned all his carts. People on the forums weren't able to figure it out, and he was just looking for any ideas of what that could be.
He may need a RAM job.
You think this is an issue with the Phantom 1 converter? RAM? I don't know how that thing works. I don't even know what it is.
Oh, is this only when he uses the converter?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, no, it's not a RAM job. Never mind.
I know there's I'm not completely sure how that thing works, but if I remember correctly, there's an extra chip that you need in that converter because there's a slight difference between the hardware that's included in the AES mainboard versus the MVS mainboard. And I think it has to do with sprite deserialization. So because the Neo Geo is a highly parallel system, right? There's character memory, there's sound memory, there's program memory, and all of it comes in parallel. That's why that's why the console is so damn powerful, because it's got a whole bunch of buses it can access at the same time. But one of the things the sprite memory does is it deserializes some of the sprites from various ROMs on the cartridge and presents it as the right bit width for the video display processor, and that's something that's done on the converter itself. So I'm not saying I know what's wrong with his thing, but it sounds like there would be a problem with his converter because it does have to play the sprite data in order to convert between the MVS cards to the AES cards. So I would definitely have a look at that.
So
I don't know if there's. Sorry, go ahead.
Did you take a look at the screenshots he had?
No. Let me go on the.
I could post it in our Skype chat if that helps at all.
Sure. Because at one point I was talking to a guy called Furtech, right? He made a converter at one point, but he stopped making it. And basically there's a CPLD on his chip, and it just does the deserialization. And I'm not trying to sound cryptic or anything. I don't know what that deserialization implies, but it's putting the sprite data into the proper format for the VDP, and that's something that the MVS console does on the main board, but the AES had to do it.
Well, these
cartridges, so that when you want to convert an MVS card to an AES card, not only do you have to change the pinout, but you data manipulation in order to get it to work.
These screenshots are kind of interesting. Now, if I remember correctly, the Neo Geo doesn't have bit planes or character graphics.
Everything is a sprite.
Everything is rendered in sprites, right? So
there is a background layer, but then
it's never
above it.
Right? Really? I mean, as far as this goes, and these screenshots
probably.
Well, I don't think that it's in the screenshots that are being sent here. You can see the vertical banding, but it's never that's never sort of populating around any of the text. So I think Renee's he's probably right here. Unfortunately,
I'm trying to find there was some VHDL available for that at one point.
Oh, VHDL? Throw it out. Nobody uses that.
Or something's gone open here. Something's either
I like my verbosity.
He was saying so. Didn't he say something about he would clean it like crazy and then it would work once and then stop working? I don't remember. I don't have anything in front of me, so
I think something's opened here.
Yeah, he cleans it with deoxit gold, and it'll play perfectly for an hour, and then they come back.
Yeah, that's what's happened. There's an open. I don't know where. I'd like to see some. If he would take some pictures of the hardware, maybe we could see some. Maybe we could see something on the hardware that's not up.
Well, John, if you're out there, maybe you can take some pictures, and we can take a look and answer it next time.
John, take some pictures.
Call John now. There's an interesting question from Drew of This Old Console on Twitter, and I actually want to change his question. He said, what retro game do you believe has had the biggest flip in public opinion since its initial release? I think a more interesting question is, are there any games where your opinion has flipped since maybe as a kid where you thought a game sucked and now you really like it, or vice versa? Because I don't think any of us know what public opinion is on anything.
Agreed.
I have to think about that.
A game that my opinion has swayed over the years.
Yeah, so I think for me, I don't know for sure yet because I haven't really given it a full playthrough, but I have a feeling that if I give it an honest shot, I will end up really liking Echo the Dolphin. And whereas a kid, I thought that game was complete garbage and hated it.
I don't know if this applies, but ever since the Super Nintendo days and Secret of Mana, I've always wanted to play Seiken Densetsu 3, and I finally did. I think two Novembers ago, and I did not like it at all. Or I don't know about all, but I was not impressed. I did not have. I didn't think it was that great, and a lot of people think it's better than Seiken Densetsu 2, and I didn't agree with that. But I don't know if that applies to this question, but.
So I remember Renee telling me that as a kid he really liked a game, I think it's called Super Metroid, but now he thinks it's like complete trash. Doesn't see what the value in it is anymore.
It's a
best game ever.
Yeah, I
Obvious
fucking love
evolution.
Super Metroid.
When I was a
Best
kid,
game ever, hands down.
I liked Anal Fantasy Mystic Quest for some reason. I loved that game. I loaded it up a couple of years ago, and it's arguably the shittiest game I've ever played in my life.
See, I disagree. I liked it too, and I still like it.
There was just in a complete long list of games that I played as a kid, and I think the reason is, when you're a kid and you get something, that's it, you're stuck with it. So like the Ninja Turtles game, I liked the Ninja Turtles and I liked playing Nintendo, so why not why not try to mix them? The Ghostbusters game, playing all those now is just fucking terrible. So that's it's mostly for me. It's just games that I played as a kid because I had to, because that's what we bought. And now I've tried them and I've kept an open mind, but they suck.
Yeah, that's one I didn't think of. That original first Turtles game it's brutal. It's like no fun at all.
Somebody just did a ROM hack on it, and the ROM hack is amazing. And I played it for like 20 minutes, and I felt really bad because at the end of the 20 minutes, I was still like, wow, he really improved this game so much. Still a shit game. Goodbye.
The game I'd like to give another honest shot to, and I think the only reason I didn't like it a whole bunch as a kid is because it's impossible. It is Comic Zone, and I think now if I tried and played it, I might enjoy it a little bit more. I still think that game is still hard.
It's still impossible.
I can think.
I thought that was my opinion too. I actually bought Comic Zone like a couple of years ago. I tried playing it, and I didn't like it any more than I liked it in the past, and I thought it was still horribly way too difficult. So I still don't enjoy it.
Yeah, I can. That is kind of a
or a game games. that I guess I'm having a hard time trying to find a game that I liked and now I don't like or whatnot. But there seems to be general consensus, anyways, on the internet that Sonic CD is apparently a really good game. And every time I try it, I think it fucking sucks ass. I can't stand that game.
Oh, fuck you.
Yeah, I've tried it a few times. I guess it's like the part of me from liking old Sonic games of wanting to explore as much as I can. That the past and future thing really gets to me. I'm like, I wasn't done exploring future yet. Like, I don't want to be sent over to the past world now. I don't know. I think that aspect of the game always throws me, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it ruins the experience. I think if you had the option to just play sequentially through past, present, and future, that would make the game a whole lot better.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I don't know. I still love Sonic CD though.
Yeah, thank you, Bob.
You're a bad person for that.
It's just, and even when it came out, when I first started getting into all this stuff, and I got my PVM, and I played through to the end, and I didn't get all the Chaos Emeralds, but I thought it was great. And then when the Christian Whitehead version came out on Apple TV, I played through it again just to see if, what it was like, and they did a great job. But it's still, I liked it both ways. So,
Voltar, you were about to mention something. Let me cut you off.
Let me quote Bob. I liked it both ways.
I was waiting. I was
That's
waiting.
why I
I
was
said
giggling.
it. I thought for sure it was
I-
Zach that was going to jump on it, but
There's two games. The original Metal Gear. It was pretty shitty, but I liked it as a kid. But the most I guess when I was 11 or 12 years old, or right at that age, Fighting Force for the PS1. Me and my best friends, David and Austin, played that religiously, and we thought that was the greatest game in the world. A PS1 3D beat 'em up. Well, I popped that in a couple of years ago, and good Lord Jesus of Latter-day Saints, does that game blow dogs for quarters. If you run out of ammo, you can have some of mine. Won't you be needing any? Infinite ammo. Sorry. I just wanted to do Snake. I like doing Snake. I'll say whatever you want.
You put the eye patch back on and then do it again.
Okay.
switch
Here.
eyes this time, though.
Okay.
There you go.
You want me to
This is
yell?
this
Let me
is-
do the right thing. Okay, here we go.
This is a virtuous mission.
I don't know if you can hear me well, but I like the part in Metal Gear Solid 2 where, Raiden's like, don't you need your ammo? And Snake's like, he's like, if you run out of ammo, you can have some of mine. Won't you be needing any? And then Snake, like a motherfucker, points at his bandana, and he's like this, he goes, infinite ammo, kid. That's all. Sorry about that. I am Solid Snake in a lot of ways. Touch me in my naughty places. Not you, Bob.
Ugh. I think that's kind of the whole list of questions that had kind of built up. I think we had one question that if he used the component cables, would he be able to beat Road Rash 2? Probably not. Road Rash 3 is pretty beatable. That game, at some point, you just build up enough money to buy the crazy bike, and then just first place every
The
race.
Diablo.
Yeah, that's right. Although you got to make sure you don't crash that thing flooring at full speed.
Pretty much exactly like what it was like when I used to race motorcycles. Well, anybody in the chat got any questions?
Yeah, I haven't been paying attention to the chat too much.
Well, while you're in the audience, I would like to say one thing, and Bob and I talked about this, not really, but he made a comment on it. I made a video about Dushin Dance's PC engines, and I made the claim that you shouldn't buy modded consoles off of eBay. And maybe that was a little too crass, and maybe what I really meant to say was ultimately what I didn't say. There is nothing wrong with buying things off of eBay, including modified game systems. Just be sure that you do your homework and ask them to send some dick pics of the consoles that they're selling, and ask a few simple questions like that just to ensure that you're getting something that's been reasonably handled. I shouldn't have said that you should never buy anything off of eBay that's been modified. That was a little silly of me to say, and I just wanted to clarify that.
And that was a PSA from Voltar. It's
Yeah,
just that simple.
Just get pics. Just get dick pics. Is all I'm saying. So that's all I really wanted to do. By the way, this eye patch kind of looks like one of Madonna's bras from the 80s.
It actually does.
Shut
So
up.
I want to jump back to the Neo Geo thing we were talking about earlier. So I found exactly what chip the converter tries to emulate with the CPLD. The chip is the Pro-CT0. What it does is it's the graphics multiplexer actually. So what I'm guessing is that there's probably multiple graphics chips on the MVS cart, and they're not on the same read-write signals, or they're not on the same data bus. But this multiplexer chip selects which chip you're reading sprites data from. So it seems like the sprite data has been split up into multiple chips. And this thing kind of serializes or deserializes everything back together. There's a whole page on it on the wiki, wiki.neogeodev.org, and there's
So,
even
does it
a
kind of-
diagram, a logic diagram of what it does. So.
does it kind of couple different parts to the bus at different times so that it can do everything?
Well, I don't know if they did this so that maybe they had slow access memory chips, so they're triggering a write on one, and then during the other half cycle they're reading from the other, so that they're essentially creating a faster memory out of two memories. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas here, but
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Something for was his name John?
Mhm.
Ask that, yeah. John, if you could
Yeah,
send
so-
some pictures.
if John is still there, here's the link to that article. Oh, I can't put any web links in the chat. Never mind.
But he said if he cleaned it, it was working. I would like to see some pictures of that, John. If you could share those on Twitter, perhaps. Any more questions from
there were two in there. Somebody was asking about N64 mods, and just to skip to the end, literally inside the N64, the traces are not connected. So, like, imagine inside an N64, the wires aren't plugged in. So you can't get a better quality without a mod. It's not like a SNES, like the FAT1 chips, where it already outputs RGB totally fine, but you could kind of improve it if you want. The N64 is not like that. Nothing's actually plugged in to connect the signals, which is why you have to have some kind of mod in order to do it. And somebody else asked about why is the SNES signal so weird. I'll give the simple explanation, and then Steve's going to tell what it really is. But it's basically the resolution isn't the issue, it's the refresh rate, how many times it refreshes per second. Because for CRTs, it really didn't matter because it just accepted whatever you threw at it. But digital processors and flat screen TVs sometimes don't understand, hey, I'm expecting exactly 60 times per second or 59.97, but the off timings screw with it. Steve, how close was I?
That was pretty much spot on. Yeah, it's just the tolerances of CRTs are way looser, and the digital stuff is expecting like a constant rate, certain rate, and if it doesn't see that, it kind of gets all.
Yeah, CRT will take anything you throw at it, and HD TV needs something standardized. Is basically
it's
the general thing that's going on there. If it's not a standardized sync signal coming in, it freaks out.
It's got a table of stuff, and it's like, all right, which one matches this table? And if it's not in the table, or if it's like not constant and it's bouncing around everywhere around the table, then yeah.
Well, should we end this with what we got coming up? The Rectal Vision guys, clearly you should start because you have a big sale coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, we're going to. We have a blog post on our website that you can read all of the details, and you really should if you're interested in buying cables. But the shorthand of it is that this Saturday will be the first in 3 waves because we can't possibly release all of our inventory at once and ruin our distributors' lives. And besides, we don't want things shipping out 3 weeks later for somebody that ordered something this weekend. So we're divided up, and this also kind of gives people extra chance if they miss one day. Hopefully, they won't immediately resort to emailing us and yelling at us for being bad people. Somebody in the questions, they actually did ask if we would produce a power adapter ourselves. That's not something we're looking to get involved in. Just kind of distract from the million other things we want to work on. And we think this is a kind of a reasonable solution, even though it is pieced together from a few different pieces.
Gotcha. Zach, what about you? Other than your little floppy adapter thingy.
There's a couple of things. I've got to get back on the Sega Mega Video Kit. There's still a lot of people asking, and no, that's not disappeared. I was kind of waiting for a few certain things to arrive so I could really jump back on that properly. That will be made available relatively soon. And the next big avenue, or the next big thing that'll be coming from my loins, will be Neo Geo AES and hopefully MVS proper RGB bypass kits. And maybe something special for the 2-chip PPU SNES one day.
Okay, tall order to fill. Renee, what about you? Am I going to get my Genesis bypass yet? I've been dying for that thing.
Well, see, it needs a new board spin. I've been on and off working on it, but as I've been saying, I've been getting a lot of orders for the graphics booster, which is consuming all the time that I'm willing to devote to DB Electronics in any given week. And there's been some home repairs that I've had to do at home too, which are taking a lot of my time. And on top of that, today I was approached by a major, what I think anyways is a major play in the retro gaming community, and I'm gonna probably have a large deal with this person. I'm not gonna reveal like any details right now, but when it comes, excited to announce it. And unfortunately, Bob, that's going to take up a lot of my time too.
Oh.
But I mean, Steve's already had a look at the schematic and reviewed it like 3 months ago. So I mean, it's just waiting for me to make a new board and send it out. So, unfortunately, that does take 4 or 5 hours, and then sleeping on it for a few days and looking at it again and going, oh shit, what kind of stupid mistake did I do? And then fixing it and
then fix that and then correct the stupid mistakes that I made.
So, but yours is coming. I mean, I did prove that the circuit works as intended, right? So we just wanted to do some tweaks, simplify the board design, really on the Genesis side. So it's actually minor stuff. It's whether it's minor or not. When you're changing a PCB, it's a lot of work, and it's kind of, I always. You guys probably feel this way too, but when you send out a PCB to be ordered, that's it. It's not like a piece of software where you can just recompile and try a new version in the next 5 seconds, right? If you make a mistake on a PCB, you're like a month away from having a real other fix in your hands and having fixed your problem correctly. So it's kind of scary sending out a PCB sometimes, especially when it's a complex board.
Yeah, you jammed a lot of stuff onto that one. So.
Yeah. There's the mega amp and the bypass.
Yeah, that fact almost killed Steve the winter of the Kickstarter, getting a board out in time so that we could actually place an order.
They gave me 2 weeks to relay out something they needed mechanically, to order all the parts and the stencil and build it all and ship it all within, I think it was 2 weeks. It was insane. And these boards have like 100 components on them, all 0402, microscope, pick and place. It was horrible.
So yeah, I guess that's call that a wrap, huh?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's good to. I don't even think we've Skyped just like off the round table altogether since we saw each other back last month. So it's good to get all together again.
Well, the rest of us did. We just didn't invite you.
Yeah, well, that's the Retro Snobs plus minus Nick chat. Well, cool. Yeah, I guess we'll do this next month and send out info once we have it. Oh yeah, somebody in the chat mentioned this, but too many games this weekend. I'm gonna try to make it. I don't know if 100% yet, but I know that Corey and Tri of My Life in Gaming are going to be there and doing a panel. So
yep.
If you're in the neighborhood, you should definitely go check them out. I don't know what they're going to be showing yet. It sounded like it's going to be a toss-up between maybe something from their new Saturn RGB episode or some of the Night Trap stuff that they did. So, yeah, it should be cool.
Awesome. All right, well, I'll see you guys next week. The rest of us will see you next month, and a few of us might be appearing in videos together soon in a few weeks as well. So we'll see all you guys soon.
All right, take it easy.
See ya.
Take care, everybody. Take care of your body.